So for example, with the paper and packaging industry, word equity came along later. So other research helped us identify which was the area that strategically gained us the most. And that was the area of sustainability. And so once that kind of research identified, okay, sustainability is where we need to be playing, then we got into, okay, what specifically are the ways we talk about our sustainability play and to be able to tell that story. And that's kind of where that word equity was one of the components of that. The attention span of our audience has gotten far smaller, where people, instead of reading a newspaper, they read headlines and one-liners, and they get an assessment of what's going on in the world. It's become even more significant in my mind in terms of the exact words that we choose. And this was largely the impetus that led us to create a tool. We call it word equity, in which we simply assess the feelings related to individual words and phrases. In equity, like if you're thinking of the equity of a home, it's what you owe minus what you've already paid off in it, and what's the net value of it. And so we take the positive scores minus the negative, and that gets us a net equity score. When a lot of people think of paper, they think about where it comes from. And you start out with forest is a really powerful thing, but on the opposite side, often people think if I'm using paper, I must be causing trees to be cut down. In the industry, there was a strong feeling that if people just thought of what we do, like planting corn and then harvesting corn, maybe that would be a more positive way to talk about what we do. And then there was thoughts in the industry, well, maybe if we talked about who owns these forests or how they're managed, describing the status of a forest as healthy and thriving or better, renewable and sustainable, really strong positive components. But really, when it comes to this element of the story about paper and packaging, it really comes down to this idea of planting trees, planting versus replanting. Just a little wording change from replanting to planting creates a strong, much more positive connection to what's going on. So if you revisit then that question of what business am I in, and you kind of add these components to it, you really get a much clearer strategic implication for what this industry ought to be talking about. So that's just a pretty simple illustration of how the word equity can help you in better describing who you are and what you do. We track on a variety of things. One of the things that I think has been most successful is the audience that we've been targeting. They're a group called expressives. They make up about 35% of the American population. And they're people who are actually using and engaging with paper and paper goods far more than everybody else. The biggest metric of change that we've trying to affect is the feeling that people have of using these kind of materials, that for some of them creates a sense of guilt. I'm using things that might be wasteful, or I'm using too much of it. But by telling the story of the renewability, recyclability, it affects the level of the degree that people may not feel as guilty of it, because they know it's not like a fossil fuel that when we've depleted, it's gone. It's a renewable resource that can be carefully managed in a way that I don't need to feel as concerned about that. But the biggest thing that happened was the category itself grew. Went from about 35% to about 43% in terms of people who felt comfortable being more creative, innovators, and users, expressives of the paper category, in that category. Everybody knows that words matter, but I think people are often at a loss at how do I best find the right words? There's just simple quantitative metrics that allow you to get a quick emotional value to words that are available. Because we've been doing this for 10 years, we literally have thousands and thousands of words that we use in our vocabulary that we mapped out, and we know what their equity are. And our ambition is to grow that to tens of thousands of words in our vocabulary and be able to just have a quick way to say, if I say this or that, how does it work? And if it's with that audience versus that audience, how does it work? And that's just I think, a tremendous resource for helping business leaders kind of navigate this world.